To find out more about this, dig into the numbers, we're joined by Harry Holzer, professor of public policy at Georgetown University. Harry, thanks so much for joining us. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Let's first get your reaction to the jobless data. What does it mean for the jobs and labor market and the economy? And a lot of people are going to wonder, has the plan by the Fed to try to bring down inflation, is that figuring into this at all?
Well, we have had a very, very tight labor market in the United States the last couple of years, really a shortage of workers in many industries. But the labor market is starting to cool. We do see hiring levels going down, new job creation going down, and we're starting to see some increase in layoffs in some sectors, in construction, in some parts of retail. And that's what shows up in these unemployment insurance new claims data. It was a very small increase of 5,000. The better thing to look at is to look at sort of 4-week averages. And the 4-week average really has risen pretty consistently since January, in the last 3 months or so, from about 200,000 to 240,000 a week. So it does suggest layoffs are starting to rise. Hiring activity is starting to calm down. In fact, wage growth is also starting to calm down. All of that suggests that the Fed's plan, through raising interest rates to cool off the economy, does seem to be having some effect.
Okay, what about the job market? We've heard about the Great Resignation. Does this still favor employees in any way, or is the tide beginning to shift?
You know, I think the tide is beginning to shift. It remains pretty strongly in favor of workers. You know, the job vacancy rate remains 6%. It was 7%. That's very, very high. That's still almost twice the unemployment rate. But you do see wage increases starting to come down. The Great Resignation, people talked about workers quitting a lot and employers having to pay more to keep them from quitting. But you've seen the quit rates come down as well. So things are starting to cool off. Although for people who want a job, it remains a very strong labor market by most measures, just not quite as red hot as it was 3 months ago.
Right. And one thing you talk about, the employees still having, to a certain degree, the upper hand. How important is pay transparency right now? And also, look, there are a lot of people who've worked from home the last 2.5 years, and they're going to say, look, I'll go back to work at a different job, but I still want to do a lot of it at home. Is that going to happen in the near future?
Well, you know, first in terms of pay transparency, I think that's a good thing. I think it's good that some states and localities are requiring employers to make their pay public. It tends to reduce very large differentials between low wage and high wage jobs. And I think that's a good thing. It is still pretty rare in the United States. Only a small number of states and cities are requiring employers to do that. So good thing, but it remains very, very low. Now, the other thing you mentioned is remote work. A lot of employees, including me, have decided they really like remote work. They're willing to go to the office a few days a week. I think you're going to see a lot of these hybrid situations where workers come in 2-3 days a week. You have those face-to-face interactions, but when possible, you try to work from home. Now let's also be clear. Remote work was primarily something that highly educated, sort of college-educated professionals and managers engaged in. You know, if you have to give haircuts to people or face customers, can't do that from home. Right. But for those of us that did have it, a lot of us like it, and I think employers will have an incentive to keep doing some of that as they call people back.
And what about flexibility, both blue-collar jobs and white-collar jobs? What should people do if they're interested in trying to find a new job right now?
Well, it remains a good time to look for work. There remain lots of vacancies, lots of openings in different fields. Of course, sometimes people may not have the skills that are required in certain high-paying occupations. So you might want to look around and look at jobs and see if you can find something better than right now. But if not, it might be a good time to invest in skill building. You know, go back to community college, get an associate degree, get a professional certificate of some kind, and see if that, you know, especially in fields where we know there are worker shortages. in healthcare, in elder care, in certain kinds of very high-skilled manufacturing.
Right.
Now, we also know, by the way, construction is going to pick up as the infrastructure bill kicks in and as the CHIPS bill kicks in. So, pay some attention to the areas that are going to remain hot and see if you do not have the skills. See if you can go out and get them relatively quickly. And that, I think, would bolster people's wage capabilities.
Indeed. Harry, you've done a great job working from home for us. We certainly appreciate it. Harry Holzer with public policy, professor of public policy at Georgetown University. Thank you again.
Thanks very much.